Just a reminder, still under oath.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Judge. I apologize. I was working from a previous copy of your presentation. But nevertheless, I want to show you, ask you a few follow-up questions on this presentation. In terms of the post-mortem fentanyl concentrations that your lab looked at in 2020, you looked at a total of 19,185 cases, correct?
We actually looked at a lot more than that, but I specifically chose a subgroup that was peripheral blood because, again, cardiac blood inflates things and represents most accurately what might be found in a living subject.
Okay. So you were looking and focused specifically on the concentrations in the most equivalent type of blood sample that was taken.
To the extent that you can do that, yes.
Right. But in those 19,185 cases then, not all of them represent a fatal overdose, correct?
That is correct.
And so of the 19,185 cases, do you know the number of cases that would be attributed to overdose specifically?
Unfortunately, we don't, because we don't get the history on a lot of the cases or what the outcome was, or even in context.
So you can't determine which of these cases included something like a gunshot or included something like a heart attack or something else that would cause samples. You say the mean level of these samples was 16.8 nanograms per milliliter, right?
Yes.
And when we say the mean level, you're talking the average,
Yes.
right? So if you take up all of the 19,185 cases, add up their levels, and divide them by the number of cases, that's the average, right?
Correct.
And the median being 10 nanograms per milliliter,
Yes.
right? Meaning that's just 50% of the cases have higher fentanyl levels and 50% have lower, right?
Yes.
And again, we can't differentiate what the actual cause or manner of death was in any one of these cases, right?
That's correct.
Now, this is when you're looking at the inclusion of norfentanyl versus the exclusion. The vast majority of those cases included norfentanyl, right?
They did.
15,455 of the 19,185 cases.
That is correct.
Now, when you look at the DUI concentrations, obviously people are, this is a little bit of a different type of a situation, right? People are alive.
Yes.
They're driving a motor vehicle, right?
Yes.
Presumably.
Or sleeping in one.
Right, I suppose. And here again, there were 2,345 DUI cases, right?
Yes.
The average level was 9.59, right?
Yes.
And the median level was 5.3. So 50% below.
Correct.
Nevertheless, they were all arrested for DUI, right?
Well, again, as I mentioned, other drugs may be present, so this is just looking at fentanyl.
And so what we're really doing is we're trying to isolate and create some form of a comparison of Mr. Floyd's fentanyl levels and his norfentanyl levels to some sample of population, right?
Correct.
One sample of population we know is alive, right? Because they're driving a car. And the other sample, we have no frame of reference. Did they die from fentanyl overdose or did they die from some other reason? We have no context.
That's correct. All we know is they're deceased.
In terms of when we look at the ratio of fentanyl levels between 9 and 13 nanograms, right? Of the 19,185 postmortem cases, 3,088 of those cases had a similar fentanyl concentration to Mr. Floyd, right?
Yes.
Again, of the 3,088 cases within that range, we have no frame of reference or no context as to what.
The only thing we have is a similar concentration.
All right. And so, statistically kind of speaking, it's fair to say that some of the 3,088 people in that category died of fentanyl overdose.
Yes.
And some percentage died of some other cause.
Yes.
And again, in terms of the amphetamine, the methamphetamine and the amphetamine, methamphetamine